That's not what we're used to. I mean, we're used to looking people in the eye, not looking at this little
Yes.
itty bitty camera.
Yeah.
All right. So it's been a little while, Willie. I saw you. I saw you in that presentation you did in Dubai, which I thought was brilliant. Had a great time watching you present there.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
It's amazing that it took a pandemic to really get some things like that going, right? But that was just fun to watch you present there. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. World champion of public speaking with Toastmasters, businessman, Air Force vet. Give us a little of your background.
Yeah, okay. So what you would call a military brat. My dad was in the Army, and I joined the Air Force at age 17, right out of high school, and spent the next 20 years in the Air Force, traveling all over the world. I was in the intelligence business. We worked for the National Security Agency, and I'm a Vietnam vet. I spent 2 years in Vietnam. I went to Vietnam on my regular tour and before the Gulf of Tonkin, as a matter of fact. And
Wow.
Then my brother, my older brother, who was avoiding the draft back in those days, he finally got drafted, and he decided that he was going to go to Canada like many thousands other people. And our family grabbed him by the neck and said, that ain't going to happen. If you get the call, you go. And so he joined the Army. He was drafted into the Army. And then I'm in Germany at the time. And I'm saying, well, if he's finally drafted into the Army, I'm going back to Vietnam volunteering, because I don't want him to go to Vietnam, because if he does, he's probably going to get killed. And
Right.
the law at that time was that two brothers could not be in the war zone at the same time. So I went back and spent another year there until they shipped him to Germany. So I retired and moved to California after 20 years. I moved to Hawaii shortly after that, opened a computer store. I was in Toastmasters since '83. I won the World Championship of Public Speaking in '97, traveled the world, did a world tour speaking about that, had a great time traveling all over the world. And actually, my whole career changed when 9/11 happened, because I was outside the United States doing business in Africa and Europe, and the anti-American sentiment started rising all around the world. So contracts kind of dried up for me. Then in 2004, I had a cancer scare, and that also brought me off the road. And then in 2008, I had legs went bad, and so health sort of took me out of all of that. I finally recovered, and about 2012, I started back on the speaking genre and moving around and doing speaking. And today I'm in the middle of a pandemic, and you get up every day and you literally don't know what comes next. This thing has us by the neck, and it doesn't seem to be wanting to let us go. So I wake up every day, not being pessimistic about it, because I'm not a pessimistic guy, but I'm saying we got to fight this thing. I'm sort of a fighter. So I want to get out and fight it, but I don't know how. I have no idea. So I'm in the high risk group. So my job is to stay alive, and therefore I avoid people and all things related to catching the virus. So I'm sort of tiptoeing around right now. Different way of living, let me put it that way, because my natural inclination is that I'm a touchy-feely guy. I'm a guy that'll hug you. I'm one of those type people, and I like that. And so not being able to do that for fear of being infected with a virus sort of makes me have to think twice all the time, because I can't do what I normally would do. So rather than saying hello to somebody and walking toward them and putting my arm on them, I have to say hello and walk in the other direction. And that's a different way of it's having to pre-think. Normally you do things subconsciously. You just do it because that's what you always do. But now I have to consciously think of everything that I'm doing, and it tires me out, to tell you the truth. It really does. And
Yeah.
I think that psychologically, this virus is having more of an effect on us psychologically than it is with the. I know the infection is bad, but I think the psychological damage is probably even worse, and we don't even know it yet.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that. The psychological side of it is crucial for so many people, and I'll tell you that even for myself, having to transition everything from live to digital, to Zoom. that's not what we're used to. I mean, we're used to looking people in the eye, not looking at this little itty bitty camera and trying to figure out how to communicate through this camera, right? It's
exactly
quite a bit different than what we're used to. With your career and everything that you've done, tell us a little bit about communication and how important that has been in everything that you've been able to do.
People sometimes ask me, they say that I seem to have a natural way of standing up and being listened to. And I take that as, I accept that because I know it's true. But in my case, when I went to first grade at 5 years old, I didn't go to kindergarten. And so I'm in first grade at 5 years old in Tacoma, Washington. The school was Charlotteshan Elementary. If anybody's out there, shout out to Charlotteshan. So my teacher was named Miss Stocking. And Miss Stocking was the first adult woman that I had contact with close other than my mother. So Miss Stocking and I kind of bonded. I don't remember how. I just remember that I would sit on the front row in the class and I would raise my hand and I would answer questions all the time. And that fed on itself. And what happened is that I would go home after school and I would make sure I knew everything that I thought Miss Stocking wanted me to know. And the next day I'd sit gladly on the front row and raise my hand and had a good time. And she would sometimes hug me and I liked affection. And so what that did for me is set me on a path that after first grade, all the way through school, I would sit on the front row. And I would raise my hand and I would have the answer. So that meant in order to have the answer, I had to study. So I was never afraid to stand and speak to people. So I've always been able to do that very easily. The question is, I didn't understand the nuances of communication. I didn't understand the technical aspects of it, but I've never had a fear of it, which is usually the first thing that we encounter when someone asks us to stand up and speak. It's the fear of being rejected. I never felt that. I never had that. But then I would stand up and speak, and I never had feedback as to whether it was good or bad until I joined Toastmasters. And my journey in Toastmasters began when I found out at the first meeting that you get an evaluation. Someone actually stands up and they tell you what they heard you say. They tell you what they thought about it, and they tell you how it made them feel, and they give you suggestions on how they believe you can improve it. That to me was one of the most valuable things that ever came into my life, and it taught me that there is a lot more to communications than just standing up and talking. So I started that journey with Toastmasters, and when I won the World Championship in 1997, that was a culmination of hard work. It wasn't a fluke.
And that wasn't your first time either, was it?
Huh?
You were on that stage before, right?
Yes, I was there in '83. I joined Toastmasters in 1980, and I joined, and I don't know how. I think I made it on Raw Talent. That I think Miss Stocking got me there in 1983. You know, the Miss Stocking syndrome got me there in '83. But here I am in '83. I'm standing on the stage with 8 other contestants in the World Championship. I don't have any technical expertise at all. I mean, I got a little, let's say, but nothing that that I could say, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I just did what I thought was best. And I can tell you, I believe that, not only believe, I did every single thing down to the nanosecond. of what I wanted to do on that stage that morning. So I got off the stage feeling absolutely satisfied with what it is that I had achieved in those 7 minutes. Well, of course, I didn't win. I didn't place, and I didn't show. But the winner, his name was Roy Fenstermacher, rest his soul. He was electric. He was magnetic. He created an energy in that room that made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I felt it, I heard it, I saw it, and I said to myself, I don't know what that is, but it's really, really good. And if I can ever learn to do that, what he just did, whatever it is, I'm going to win this contest. And that's what I set about to do. That's what I did. And when I had it all in hand, I went back and now remember, this is 83. I never entered the contest again until 97. And the reason I didn't enter it in the interim years is I wasn't ready. When I got ready, I entered it, and it never even occurred to me that I was not going to win because I had prepared.
Right. You had complete certainty that you were going all the way.
Absolutely.
You were taking this thing 100%. That's fantastic. So did you in your journey, did you seek out a mentor, or did he actually kind of take you under his wing and show you some things?
You know, back in those days, David, I did, the concept of mentoring was not in the forefront. Coaching was it was more a formalized thing. Those weren't words you heard very often. At least I didn't hear them. Maybe they were talked about. I didn't hear them. What I did is I would seek out people who I believed had that magical thing. And surprisingly, I found a lot of them in evangelists on TV. So as an example, let's say Oral Roberts or Jimmy Swaggart. So I would watch these evangelists on TV, and what was mesmerizing about them is the control they seemed to have over the audience. And so that's what I wasn't so much, I was mesmerized by the fact that Jimmy Swaggart could be speaking, and in the blink of an eye, he would be crying. And I'd say to myself, how does he do that? How does he just cry on cue? And the audience would be in the same emotional state, that whatever emotional state he wanted them to be in, he could get them there, just talking to them. So I never really understood it so much, but I found it mesmerizing. And then I started reading books. I started reading all the self-help books I could find. And in Toastmasters, I would go listen to the speakers in the organization who had reputations for being great. I was in Phoenix, Arizona for a long time, for 6 years, and that's the home of the National Speakers Association. So a lot of great speakers were over there, and I would go listen to them. No one knew, I mean, I'm sure they thought I was there to listen to whatever message they were trying to deliver, and I wasn't. I was there to look at their technique. What is it that they're doing that creates all of this buzz in this room? And how can I emulate that? How can I learn that? That was my whole journey that I was on, and it paid off.
That is fantastic. So you sought the learning yourself. You took personal responsibility, and you went out there and you said, look, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn it myself, and I'm going to go for it. And I think that's brilliant, because so many times, at least in today's day and age, people don't take personal responsibility for their learning. They don't sit on the front row. They don't raise their hand. They don't show up with the answer every day, right? They're just not driven like that all the time. What kind of advice do you give to people now to kind of go along the same lines as the thinking that you've been on for all these years?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because I did a TEDx talk a few months ago. Yeah. And something that I am always saying to people, as a matter of fact, I'm going to give this same talk on the 27th of this month at an open house for our local Toastmasters Club. And the title of my speech is Jump. And the title of my TEDx talk was Jump. And the whole point of this is I say to them, I'm going to save you some money today, because what we normally do, those of us who are presenters or people who want to do something, no matter what it is in your life, we spend a lot of time doing research. We spend a lot of time paying money to coaches and mentors and going to seminars and workshops and buying tapes and videos and books. And we invest this enormous amount of energy and resources and time into all of this stuff as if something is going to happen. And I point out that nothing is going to happen. You can do this for the rest of your life. You could be so steeped in information and technique. You can have all the resources in the world, but at some point, ladies and gentlemen, you have to walk to the edge of the cliff and jump. That's what you have to do. You can't keep saying tomorrow and I'll do it later. You have to just jump. And the whole point is that if you're prepared, you've done your work, there's only so many ways you can learn to drive a car. You can't learn to drive it any better. So once you have been able to go around the block and park the car and you understand the traffic laws, go take the test. Go take it. You know, that's my
Willie Jones. Are you trying to tell me that we have to actually do something? Yeah. We can't just go sit in a meeting and absorb all this stuff like we're just sitting there just taking it all in. You say we actually have to work? We gotta do something to get something? What are you talking about? That's garbage, man. Nobody ever taught us that we had to work. We actually had to do something for what we make.
You know, you go to the basic seminar, then you go to advanced seminar, then you go to the master class, then you go to the boot camp. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Now, I will say this. If at the first meeting I went to, if I took action, and then I got to a point where, okay, you know what? I'm moving. Now I can pay somebody to help me move a little faster. Yes. But if I haven't even taken the first step, yes. Oh, for the love of all that's good and holy, right? So, and it's funny because you'll go to the next level class and they'll say, what do they say? The exact same thing they said the first level class. But they're like, well, did you take the action? You're like, well, no, then that's why I'm telling you again. You just paid a little bit more, so hopefully you'll pay a little more attention this time. It's crazy.
So the whole idea when I'm coaching people, and I do some coaching, and when I'm coaching people, I tell them I don't have any answers. I have questions. What I'm trying to do is get you to seek the information between your ears and gather the courage to do something. And the point is that even if you fall down, guess what? You get up stronger. You don't get up weaker. You learn. Every time you stumble, you learn. And every time you learn, you get stronger. It is the law of the universe. Whenever there's a forest fire, the forest does not weep for long. It comes back stronger. It doesn't come back weaker. It recovers. You'll recover. So you must take the risk and jump.
Absolutely. You know, it's very interesting. Our relationship, you know, when we met years ago, it's been a few years, hasn't it? But when Larry Lands introduced me to you the first time,
yeah,
and we started that mentor relationship, all you ever did was ask me these stupid questions. I'm like, why don't you give me something? It's like, no, it was about drawing out what was already inside. Yes. And in fact, you already knew the answer, and it cracks me up because on this one particular speech, you knew exactly the line you wanted me to use. You knew exactly how you wanted me to use it. And you must have asked the same question in 15 different ways to finally get that answer out. Exactly that line. It took you forever to get that line out of me, but I finally came out with it, and you're like, yes, finally. And it took you forever, but at least you got it, right? Yeah, you're right.
You are prominent in my thoughts over the years, David, because I tell people that you were in I think it was Los Angeles for that regional contest, weren't you?
I think it was LA, yes.
Okay, and I told them that was the year that you were going to get to the finals because you had the speech, you had the right magic moment in that speech, and I said he has something in that speech that when he does it, it's going to carry him to victory in that regional. This is the year for David to be on the stage in the finals. And it was the year that you had your relative in the audience. And I said, when you talk about this relative of yours, who was a very important historical person, I want you to then say he's sitting right over there and have your relative stand up. You remember that?
I do.
What did you do, David?
I do remember that like it was yesterday.
What?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Will.
I said
no,
we're going to ban
instead,
him. I said he can't come back to Hawaii. That's it. He's got to move.
Yeah, instead Lance Miller gets up, and at the beginning of his speech, and he's welcoming everybody, and he says, and of course, Uncle Ernie. And then everybody just gives him a standing ovation. And I'm like, for the love of all that's good and holy, like I can't catch a break here. He did go on to win the world championship. I'm just saying,
There's still time, David. You got the chops. And you've perfected them over the last year. You should go back and look at your first videos that you put up, and then look at the ones that you did 6 months later. See how much progress you made. Really, really noticeable, and really, really. I was saying to myself, I didn't know where you were going. I said, I don't know what is this going to be his career now? But then as you got better and better and better, I said, man, I'll see him on stage someplace soon, because you were moving along very, very, very well. I was in awe of you at the way that you transformed from just kind of speaking to the camera to actually having some very good content that you were putting out, and very good subject matter that you were talking about that everyone needs to hear. And I was saying, wow, look at David. And I'm hoping that that's what you're going to do, because the things that you were seeing and the experiences you had are things that people need to know. And you and I both know from being in the business world and working with employees and working for large companies that having people, giving people knowledge, giving them training, giving them the tools that they need to just get through everyday life successfully are tools that most people are never become aware of, because it's usually not available to them. And it's not like you're telling them something that is never been heard before, but you're making them think about something and they go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense for me to, because you talk about such thing as being responsible, right? You just something simple. How can you expect a company to pay you a salary? And they've agreed to pay you the money. You've agreed to take the money, and now you decide that you don't want to work for it. That doesn't make any sense. And so when something happens bad, and you say, I didn't have anything to do with it, then how did we contact you? So when you talk to people about those things, I say to myself, man, oh man, oh man, I hope that he pushes this and makes sure that it's available inside of corporations, not to the management, to the employees. Employees. When you were managing those big stores, you were the type of manager, and I know you know this, so I'm just repeating it for Facebook. I bet your employees thought a lot of you on a personal level because they knew that you cared about them. Am I right?
You're right. A lot of them did. In fact, I think that's probably my biggest weakness, is I cared too much about them. Some of them, I cared more about them than they cared about their own progress.
Well, sometimes we can make that mistake. That's a part of it. Nothing's perfect, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, I've been a manager for a very, very long time. But one of the biggest failures that I can say in management was, again, what you said is getting people to see that they're responsible for themselves. Right. And when I say I failed at it, it's that I have always assumed, and wrongly, that people got up in the morning wanting to do the right thing. So that's my default position. But I'm not sure of that anymore. And when I say anymore, I haven't been sure of that in 30 years because I've worked with employees and there are actual people who wake up in the morning and have no desire to do the right thing. And there's no way to dissuade them otherwise. And as a senior manager, if you spend 80% of your time on 10% of the people, you're not a good manager. Because you're neglecting the people who are actually doing the work. Right. And I think that when I talk to management people and talk inside of companies, and I always point out to them that if you have 100 employees, this whole thing is being done by probably 15 of them. The other 85 are just kind of hanging around. Most of them are doing okay, but you're spending a lot of time dealing with 5 or 10% of them who aren't doing anything. And that's the inverse of what you should be doing. You should be spending your time on that 15% who's actually grinding, who's actually keeping you in business. And those are the people that you should always let know that you know what they're doing and you should do your level best to take care of them. If you do that, then that can be an inspiration for the other 85%. But just spending your time but spending most of your time dealing with mediocrity that's never going to get better or dealing with unsatisfactory performance as if you can change that person's course through counseling or through all the tools that we use, disciplinary tools that we use, to me is wrong-headed. Because I can tell you from experience, the person who goes outside and talks on their cell phone during business hours, breaking the rules, I don't care how many times you discipline that person, you know what they're going to do at the next opportunity?
They could be on their phone outside.
They're going to go outside and get on their phone, right?
That's right. There's no two ways about it. They're going to go smoke. We're going to go smoke 3 more cigarettes. They're going to go smoke 3 more cigarettes.
Right. They're going to, that is their behavior. That's what they're going to do. And what's the point of thinking that you can save them? You can't. They have to save themselves.
That's right. Yeah, and it's interesting because we as leaders have got to teach correct principles and let our people govern themselves. And as they govern themselves, obviously, as you were talking about, reinforce that outstanding behavior of the 15% or the 20% that's getting 80% of the work done, because others will be inspired to join them. I absolutely agree with that.
I believe that too, but
others will rise to the occasion.
I have a college degree, and one of my concentrations was business, and the other was human resources. And I got my college degree late in my military career because I was going to night school. Well, the first supervisor I had when I joined the Air Force, I went to Anchorage, Alaska. I was 18 years old when I got there. And I went to work for a man named Shelley Porter. And there were 14 of us in the section where I worked. And so I'd never heard of management. Of course, I'm only 18 years old. But Shelley Porter had an interview with me. He told me, first he explained to me what my job was. He explained the big picture, what we were doing in Alaska. What is it that the mission was, the mission of the unit? And he explained all of these things to me. And then he told me that what my responsibility was as a technician, whatever the work that I was doing. Then he explained to me behavior. And he said to me that he didn't have any desire to tell me to get to work on time, because I knew that. I knew to get a haircut. I knew to wear my uniform correctly and not come to work without my name tag or not my shoes shine. He said, so I'm not going to spend much time on that, but I want you to know that I will notice all of those things every day. And if you break those rules, you'll hear from me and you may not like it. He said, so I'm never going to be yelling at you. I'm never going to get angry with you. It's a simple matter. You do what you're supposed to do and I'll do what I'm supposed to do. So he said, one of the things that I want you to do is go to college. I don't care what you take. You can take bubblegum chewing, dancing. I don't care. But I want you to do something that makes you a better person. I don't want you to spend your time at the beer garden, in the club all the time, or running downtown to nightclubs. You can still do that, but one of the things that I want you to do is to go to college. Now, I'm 18 years old. I'm a little bit frightened of this guy, so I'm saying, okay, I'm going to do all of these things. On Thanksgiving and at Christmas time, he would invite all of us over to his house, and his wife would make a big dinner. Now, it wasn't voluntary. You had to go. So what Shelley Porter taught me that informs my management skills today? Shelley Porter cared about me. When I would go to work and I was coughing, and he would come by and he would look at me and he could tell I wasn't feeling good, he would say, okay, Jones, at break time, I want you to go home. Go home, go to the dorm, take some medicine or something and get into bed and get yourself together. We got this, and so I knew that he just wasn't my manager. He cared about me, and he would come up to me he didn't come up just to me, he came up to all of us, and he would spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes with you individually, looking at you, talking to you. At the same time, he's checking you out. You got your uniform on, right? Are you shaved? Do you have a haircut? Blah, 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 blah. Now, let's say you didn't have one of those things done. Well, he would put out the roster that same week that say who's going to have to go wash dishes in their off time and on their off day the next week. Well, there's your name. You knew why it was there. There was no discussion. You knew what was going on. So I learned from Shelley Porter. Care about the people that work for you. Keep them informed. Don't tell them things that they need to know to make them feel that they got skin in the game, that someone's depending on them to do their job. It's just not mechanical. So I learned that from him. And through all of my college career and all of my seminars, no one has ever informed me of anything better than what Shelley Porter did. So my management ability, my leadership skills were developed at an early age, and all I did over my life is build on that foundation that Shelley Porter has put under me and those other 13 guys. Now, surprisingly, I can tell you that I'm still in touch with 5 of them. I think five of them, yes. And we all independently say the same thing, because I've talked to them over the years, and we don't remember who our supervisor was in the intervening 18, 19 years, but we all remember Shelley Porter.
Isn't that amazing? That's absolutely amazing. So you don't remember the rest of them, but the one that really cared about you, the one that took an interest in you, the one that developed you and really pushed you is the one you remember. Not just remember, but remember with fondness, right?
Let me tell you the crowning achievement of that experience with Shelley Porter. One evening, Shelley Porter's boss, who was a captain, came over to us and told us that Shelley had to be off for 3 days, and he was going to bring an interim supervisor there to replace Shelley while Shelley got better. Well, Shelley was standing there, and Shelley said to him, "You don't have to bring anybody over here. These guys know what to do. They'll do it. You don't need that." So the captain didn't bring an interim supervisor over there. Now, don't you know that when Shelley Porter said that about us, our chest went out, and we're sitting there saying, "Hell yes, we can do this." And so when Shelley Porter came back to work 3 days later, that captain came over there and told us, Shelley, in front of us, he said, "These guys worked like crazy while you were gone. None of them were late. Nobody was horsing around." He said, "I've never seen anything like it." And we were sitting there just smiling away because we had made Shelley Porter proud. And that to me was so magical, because there were 14 of us there, and we didn't have to have a meeting about it. We knew what we were going to do in Shelley Porter's absence, and we killed it while he was gone.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And I think everybody listening out there probably has that exact same experience where they can contrast a leader that was like him versus one that was almost polar opposite, almost the exact opposite. And how much more we worked for the one that actually cared about us, that believed in us, that was a little bit tough on us, but had our back versus the one that just really we knew we were nothing but a job to them, right?
Yeah.
Just get it done and get out of my face, right? Very, very different people. And what you're talking about is treating people like family, like raising you as if you were my own child, my own son, and treating you that way, right?
But having rules,
Yes.
and having standards, and not allowing you to thwart those standards, but not spending a lot of time telling, pushing you back to the standard. If you fell off the road, then you were going to hear about it, and there was not a lot of discussion. So you knew, if you knew that if you didn't have your uniform, if you forgot your name tag for whatever reason, and you came in the building and somebody said, "Hey, Jones, you don't have your name tag." Well, I start sweating because I know that, hey, something's going to happen. It's not going to be, Shelly is not going to overlook this, right? So you stayed on your toes. And again, it's not like it was hard to do. You and I know that as managers, it's not hard to do your job. Yeah. You just do it. And so
it's easy. You just got to
uniform on correctly.
Yeah, you just got to show up and move.
Right.
It's not hard. Oh my goodness! Sometimes for some folks, it's a little difficult. And you mentioned earlier that you don't think that well, you used to think that people would wake up in the morning and they just want to do a good job. They want to go to work. They want to get some things done. And then you're like, well, but maybe I'm second guessing that a little bit, because not everybody wants to get up and do a good job. But I think, Willie, sometimes they just don't know what a good job is, what it means to take pride in something and really accomplish it, because they've never done anything like that before. There are so many times where I've hired these kids that have never had a job before, and they're in their 20s and they've never had a job, like, ever, including chores. They don't get it. And it's trying to teach them some responsibility. It can be very difficult to do that when they've never had responsibility their entire lives.
Okay, you're 100% right. And let me enlarge what I said originally. When I met Shelly Porter, I was one of those guys. I didn't know what responsibility was. I didn't know what all of those things, those principles and those mindsets were. And here's what we as managers fall down. Here's where we fall down. I don't fall down that way because Shelly he pointed the way for me. But usually when you're in a corporation and you get a new hire in, that person goes through a certain orientation, maybe through human resources, or there's maybe some pre-job training that they have to do, or by the time they're ready, they come to work. You're their supervisor. You're the person, you have to be the last person that person talks to before they go to work. And you then have to explain those things that you just said to me. This is what this company is all about. This is the size of this company in relationship to other companies. This is the competition that we have in the business world. This is how the company was founded. These are the things that this company believe in. We're happy to have you on our team. Here are some of the things that I really, really need from you as an employee. Some things that I need from you, and I need for you to commit to those things to me today. And there are some things, if you need from me, I'll commit to those things to you. And so if you spend 30, 45 minutes with that employee, laying it all out and saying, this is it. And also telling them about the consequences. This is how the discipline works here. We treat everybody the same. If you come to work late, it doesn't matter why you're late, unless it's a natural disaster. But if you tell me you're clocked in or the cat ate you, all of those things, I'll listen to you, but that doesn't stop the consequence.
That's right.
Right? It doesn't, you can't talk your way out of this, but you can't. So if you do something egregious, if you happen to pick up something you shouldn't pick up and put it in your pocket and walk out of here with it in your pocket, and the discipline for that is a 2-week suspension, then just prepare for the 2 weeks. I'm not going to be angry with you. I'm simply saying you took an action. This is the reaction.
Right.
You know, it's
That's right.
so it doesn't have to be a confrontation where everybody's going to get upset. You know, I'm just saying I don't want you to get upset because you got to take 2 weeks off. You need to get upset with the fact that you did something to create the problem. Nobody was watching you until you did something. I think that last step with supervisors having a personal conference with people who work directly for them is crucial to answer the questions that you said in a minute, giving the person an overview of letting them know how they fit in the big picture, letting them know how important their job is. Let's say that I talk to managers sometimes and I tell them that here you are running a hotel as an example. And the people who are most crucial to the success of your business are people that you don't even ever send to this training. All of the people in this room that are here for me to talk to about customer service, none of you are involved in customer service. You know, you should have
right.
you should have the person who's sweeping the sidewalk outside. They should be in here. You should have the guy in the parking lot who's letting people in and out of your parking in here, because those are the people that are in contact with your customers.
That's right.
Those are the people who can make and break your business. You know, if I drive up to your parking lot and your attendant is a real butthole, I'm coming in the door, I'm already upset. So if everyone who's in touch with your customer are the people who need the training in customer service, not
right.
the manager who's sitting in the back office who never has a conversation with a customer. Why are you?
I will say this. You're absolutely correct. But if you work for me and you're my direct report, you are my customer. Like, I need to be treating you the way I would be treating my customer, because you are my customer.
Absolutely.
You're the one who's going to go out and talk to the customer. You're the one who's face to face, right?
Absolutely. But you know what? You know that most of the employees at that first line don't know that, David. They don't know how important, because first of all, they're not making much money. Nobody hardly ever says anything to them until they do something wrong. And so they don't know how they fit in the grand scheme of things.
That's right.
They know that they're not the person that seems to be important, because everybody that gets good things, they're not on the list. So don't get prizes at the end of the year. I say to managers, you know, that person at the desk, do you know how important that person is to your business? I always am. I remember and appreciate, and I write letters and I say things when I get a person who gives me what I believe is just super service. So I've been to Africa 5 times, and on each of those 5 times, I went on a safari. And because I love safaris, if you've ever been on one, you go, whoa, wow, these animals sure are big. One year, I was in Africa and I went on a safari, and there's 10 of us in this safari van and the driver, maybe 8 to 10, I don't know. So he was driving through the bush, and he would stop at a tree and he'd say, do you look at this tree? Do you think there's anything different about it? So the more you looked at the tree, the more you saw that it was an ecosystem. You know, there's all sort of animals in that tree, but you wouldn't have noticed it if he just drove by it. It would look like a tree. He told us so much about how the animals relate to each other, how the prey animals knew when the predators were hunting. When, you know, this is why this antelope can walk close to those lions, because the antelope knows when the lions are hunting. He knows when they're not hunting. So the antelope knows when it's time to be skittish. So he explained those things to me in such a superior fashion. I gave him $100 tip, which was probably more money than he would make in 6 months. But I did that because he told me more, and I learned more about animals in the wild than I've ever learned in my life in about 1 hour. And he was so good at his job. But I'm sure that he was just doing his job, but man, was he good. Now, contrast that with the other tour drivers, they knew what tourists wanted to see. They knew that that tourists wanted to see lions and elephants and hippopotamus. And so they would drive. It's kind of like coming to Hawaii and getting a tour driver, and they take you to all the normal things because they think that that's what you want. And
you
usually
miss 98% of the island.
Right. But this particular person, he took his job seriously. He gave us a college level course in how the bush operates and how all of these animals coexist with each other. And there are people who live among those animals, and they also know the animals, and they coexist with the animals. And so I came away from there saying to myself, I've learned more on this one safari than I have ever known about these things in my entire life. That's the difference with someone who is all in on their job and someone who's just there for the money. And both people worked the same amount of hours. It wasn't like this guy was doing anything extraordinary. He was doing the same thing the other guys were doing, except he was doing it in a way that was mind-blowing. It was so good. I think everyone can do that, no matter what your job is. Yeah. No matter what your job is.
You know, what's funny is contrasting that, I'm listening to what you're saying, and the thought popped into my head recently when I went into a store. Well, I didn't put my mask on. It was in my pocket. And the lady at the door goes, "Put on your mask or you can't shop here." And I'm like, I look at this girl like who the hell do you think you're talking to?
Right.
And then I walked in without my mask on. Now, once I got inside, when I was done feeling salty, I went ahead and put my mask on. But if that girl worked for me, I would have fired her on the spot. Right. I just, right now, gone. But anyways, it cracked me up because I contrast that with
sometimes you give people power, and what happens?
That's right. Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Some people can't handle power. You can't give it to them. But you have to know that. See, before that lady was standing out there telling people to put their mask on, I bet you that if we could talk to her right now, she would probably tell us 4 or 5 incidents where she was polite and the people ignored her. So she decided she needed to raise the volume and become more in your face to get people to do what she wanted them to do. That was to her the solution to those people who are resistant to putting on the mask. And of course, you and I both know that only escalates the violence, and that only escalates it. It doesn't solve anything. Nobody is scared of you, lady. You know, it's not like they're gonna go, "Oh my God, let me put my mask on." That's not gonna happen.
It was funny. I just people's perception, right? Perception is such a big deal, But so let's talk just for a second about not just leadership, but how important has communication been to you in your leadership roles and in getting people to motivate people, right? Because you're talking about when you were going into the contest, how to get people to go with you emotionally, right? So you're telling them a story, you're moving them emotionally in a direction you want them to go, like the great the great preachers were doing. How did that transition into your leadership role when you're working with people?
Okay, I think the most important part of communications is the beginning part where you establish rapport. Rapport is the magic thing that has to happen before communications even begins. So what do I mean by that? When you approach someone, before you or that other person says anything to each other, your subconscious and their subconscious is already making lots of decisions about what it is that you're looking at. As an example, okay, I walk into a room and no one knows me, but I see the person that I want to talk to. That person sees me. That person has never seen me before. So what is that person already thinking about me as I approach them? Well, they know that I'm a black guy. They know that I'm a big guy. They know that I'm wearing glasses. They know that I have gray hair. They know all of these things. Now, what is it that their subconscious is telling them, though? Is their subconscious say he's scary? Is it saying to them he looks friendly? What is, so all of the things that your subconscious tells you about what you're looking at informs your behavior. And let's say that the person that I'm going to talk to is a woman. My subconscious starts looking at her as a female. She may be an executive, but you know, my subconscious is not telling me that. My subconscious is saying she looks nice, blah, 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 blah. So then as we get closer to these things have already happened. Now, how do I establish an effective communication with her? Well, what I want to do is I want her and I to be on the same wavelength. So I greet her, good afternoon or good morning, nice to see you, nice to meet you. Put my hand out and I shake her hand. I may notice something. I may say that's a nice handbag you have, or this is a nice building we're in, something innocuous, looking for something that she and I can have in common. And that can usually happen. But before I get to what it is I came for, I need to establish rapport. Rapport can happen it's not a long process. Let's say I walk up to her and she has on a UH, something on her that says UH alumni. And I can say, oh, I'm glad to meet I'm glad to meet a UH alumni. I live in Hawaii and I've been over on that campus a lot. Well, she just smiled. That's rapport. So it's not like it's difficult to do, but it is critical. It's critical because the person, once we establish rapport, then we lower our defensive shields and we then are able to communicate without barriers. So then my ability to communicate begins with my ability and my understanding of rapport. When I talk to people as a leader with my employees or people that I'm leading, rapport is what Shelley Porter was doing. Rapport is what I do. I make sure that there is a personal connection in some way or something we have in common as we begin to communicate with each other. Now, so if rapport is not established, that doesn't mean you won't communicate. It just means that it's difficult and you may not. Chances are you won't. And most people don't know that just because you're talking doesn't mean that the person understands anything that you mean. They may understand the words that you're saying, but they don't understand the meaning of what you're transmitting, because we're not just saying words so the person can say, he said, go. How did he say go? Did he say go? Or he said, go. So tone, all of those things inform you. Rapport is first. Rapport is what I've learned over the years to perfect, to figure it out, and then get to the heart of the matter. When I talk to real estate agents, I tell them the same thing. When I talk to anyone who has to communicate with people, when two people come together, both of them want something. If you leave the communications and you did not get what you wanted, you failed. They didn't fail. You did.
Right. That's right.
Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. You know, when you're talking about rapport, it's very interesting because that's the most important part of anything, because we do business with people we know, that we like, and that we trust. So if we're not good at building rapport, we're done.
We're done.
You may as well go home before you even start. Just don't even get out of bed. But when it comes to doing something, right? And we start with building rapport with the people that we work with every day. And that's the role of leadership, is building the rapport with everyone in our charge, right? Step one is to learn their name, right? We got to learn their name, because the most important word in the English language is what? It's our name, Willie Jones. It's our name, right? So I love that concept, and I love the lesson of Shelley Porter, simply because that was proof positive of building the rapport, building the relationship, and being able to step away and trust that you would get it done in his absence, knowing the relationship he had built with y'all, that you would get it done without fail. Really, and just put you up and built you up and put you on that pedestal, knowing that you were going to get it done.
There was no way we were going to fail. Nothing.
Right.
There was just no way. And and the feeling of satisfaction, if you are being led and you are on a team and your leader has done his job, then you're going to the wall for that person. There's no question about it. And it's no hesitation. But if that person has not done a good job of being a leader, then you may be looking for an exit ramp. You may be lagging back a little bit because you don't fully trust this person. A good leader must be trusted because you're asking people to step outside and take risks for you. And,
right.
and being that I was in a war zone and fighting a war, it becomes critically important when your life is on the line. So in the morning in Vietnam, we would get up. There were 5 of us, 6 of us that were going to be on the airplane. Well, 5 of us. So you get up and your flight time, you're going to take off at 8 a.m. So you go to the briefing in the morning at 5 a.m. You get in and you get a weather report. And so all 5 crew members are in that room. Now, you may not know the front end crew, the pilot, the co-pilot, and the navigator, because they were in a different squadron. Those of us in the intelligence business, we knew each other. So you go into the room and you look up there in the front and you see that the aircraft commander that day is a guy who has a reputation of being a drunk, or a guy who has a reputation that's not so stellar. Well, all of a sudden you start saying to yourself, this guy's going to have my life in his hands for the next 8 hours. Do I want to do this? Or do I want to suddenly develop a migraine headache and go to the clinic and take the day off? So it's in a situation of life and death, and that's what being in a war is all about. You have to trust everybody on that team. It can't be hesitation. It cannot, because your life is at stake. So when someone doesn't have your trust, even one of my buddies who's going to fly with me that day, and that person I know is a drug user, as an example. And I saw him last night at the dorm using drugs. And here we are in the morning, we're on the airplane together. Now, normally things go fine, but what if something doesn't go fine? Do I want this person next to me making decisions that may cost me my life? Well, I usually cannot prevent going with this person, but trust me, I'm watching every second. That person is taking a lot of my time, making sure that he's awake, making sure that he's doing what he's supposed to do, because this, you don't get a repeat in this situation. So the trust factor, not in a war zone, but in business, it's critically important. As you just said, leaders must be trusted. And there's no way for you to test for trust. Either I trust you or I don't. And there's nothing you can't make me trust you. You can't order me to trust you. You can't do any of that. I trust you based on your behavior. I trust you based on your leadership. I trust you because you have given me the confidence that you are the person that I'm willing to go to the wall for. That's what great leaders are all about. And David, I can tell you they are few and far between.
They are not easy to find. That is for sure.
There's not a large supply of them.
So if you're because we got to wrap up here, because I promised you an hour and I've already taken an hour and a minute of your time. But if you had anything that you wanted to share with emerging leaders, with new leaders, maybe they're newly promoted, what advice would you give them when it comes to communication and leadership, just to kind of wrap up or sum up what you've talked about today?
You have 2 jobs as a supervisor or a manager. You got 2 jobs. Your first priority, believe it or not, is to make your boss look good. Your first priority, the whole reason you're there, is to make your boss look good. Now, a lot of people would say, I'm telling you, your first job is to make your boss look good. Now, how do you make your boss look good? By developing that rapport and that leadership with the people who are working for you, molding them into a well-oiled machine that's going to get the job done in a way that the boss that you're working for is looking good. So you're the bridge between the people who are working for you and the people you work for.
Willie, you just saved our audience reading 200 pages, because in this book, it is 200 pages. And on those 200 pages, it says, make your boss look good. That's your job.